What paranormal activities have you witnessed? I went with my best friend during high school for summer vacation to his grandparents who live in the countryside in Japan. I stayed in his mom's old room, which has a small wall closet. Just above this closet was a smaller closet door, like 1.5 feet tall and about 3 feet wide, just above it. Weird design, but their house is old. The first couple weeks, I was pretty jet-lagged and Japan is hot and humid, so I didn't really sleep at night. If my light was off at night though, I always felt uneasy about that small closet space. Something about it just felt darker than the rest of the room. Toward the end of the second week, I started to adjust to the time difference. One morning, I woke up and that small door was open. It was unsettling, but I closed it and just thought maybe it wasn't closed all the way and came loose. A couple nights later, I woke up feeling uneasy. It was dark and I could kinda see, and I could see that small door was open. It was much darker than the rest of the room, like black, pitch dark. This was the first and only time I experienced paralysis. I was too scared to move, say, or do anything. I just felt this darkness coming from there. I don't remember sleeping that night, but I must have because I remember waking up the next morning. I told my friend about it, who said his mom told him about something like that, too. When we got back home, and I talked to his parents, his mom kinda joked with me, "So, I heard you met the ghost." One weekend, I was at my dad's house. He'd come to the upstairs bathroom to get a shave and heard footsteps in my stepsister's room. I thought it was him walking around initially, so I got up to find him standing at her closed door. He looks back at me and whispers, "You can hear that too, right?" I nodded and he opened the door slowly. My stepsister was asleep and never had been awake apparently. There was no way she could have crossed the room, gotten in bed, and pretended to be that convincingly asleep in the 2 seconds it took my dad to open the door. He went in, checked her TV which had never been on. She had one of those big ones from the 90s that would get warm when turned on. The radio hadn't been on either, figured maybe it was the beat of a song or something. After that, we heard the footsteps a bunch of times, usually very early in the morning. Some of the footsteps were so heavy, they'd shake the ceiling fan of the dining room directly under her bedroom and they'd woken her up a few times as well. Whenever I'd shower at my dad's, I always felt like someone was standing behind me. Eventually, I got so stressed and paranoid that I refused to shower at the house or even go into the upstairs bathroom. My dad asked me one day, "Do you ever feel like someone's in the shower with you when you're here?" After months of me feeling that way, never mentioning it to anyone. When I was 6, I slept on a bunk bed in a room alone. The bottom bunk was empty, was meant for my younger brother, but he was too scared of sleeping in a bed alone. So I was alone in that room that night. I remember a chilling feeling that night, then it suddenly got really warm, probably because I was undergoing a night terror of some sort. Then I start breathing heavily and open my eyes and see the room is empty. My little night light in the corner of the room comforts me back to sleep, except as I closed my eyes I felt a heavy hand petting my shoulder, my eyes rip open and there was no one in the room. As soon as I lay back down the petting continued and I covered my head just pretending to myself that it was my mom. It took me 12 years to stop sleeping with my head under the covers because of that memory. My mom, of course, knew a woman passed away in that apartment before we moved in, so she always believed it was that woman trying to comfort me. At my mom's old apartment, I used to have this feeling I was always being watched. Then I was starting to wake up at 3 a.m. consistently. On one of the nights I had woken up, I heard someone call out my name. It was a woman's voice, but I didn't recognize it. She kept calling out my name and walking towards my bed, getting closer, but I didn't see anything. I freaked out, jumped off my bed, and ran into my brother's room. I hopped into bed with him and tried waking him up. The punk sleeps like the dead. He still sleeps like that? I heard her footsteps follow me until his doorway. After that, every time I woke up in the middle of the night, I just ran into his room and slept on the top bunk. We had bunk beds. My mother still doesn't believe that happened. Thankfully, we only lived there for a couple of months, then moved out. I don't believe in paranormal activity, but my grandparents' house is considered by many to be extremely haunted. It's part of a tour of haunted houses in the LA area and, according to legend, was part of the inspiration for American Horror Story. There are tons of stories, but the one I experienced myself was when I was living there as a child. I was about 6 and my older sister was 12 and we shared a room. My mom had decorated our bedside table with an antique telephone that didn't work and was not plugged in. My sister and I were asleep, and for some reason we both woke up at the same time and turned to face each other. I remember feeling an extreme feeling of dread. Then the phone rang in between us. We locked eyes and both hid under our blankets till it stopped ringing. We both thought it was a dream because we didn't say anything for years about it. Then one day she was talking about it, and we realized we had had the exact same experience. There are so many more stories, but that's the only one I experienced directly. My parents had flown to Houston when I was 11 years old to see a specialist for my dad's lymphoma. It had just returned from remission, but there was no reason to think he was in any imminent danger. I was riding my bike home the day they were to fly back and stopped my bike in this ditch we used to ride down/up on our way back. When I got to the top, I felt a wave of emotion come over me, and without even knowing what I was saying, I told my friend I was riding with that my dad had just died. My friend was like, "What?" I just knew. I rode the rest of the way home to find my grandparents, my dad's parents, bawling on our back porch. I stood there watching them in the doorway for a few minutes, unable to walk out to talk to them. He had died an hour before I got home from school. No phone calls to the school, nor did I interact with anyone that knew prior to riding in the ditch. I just knew when that wave came over me. Again, there was no reason to think he was even remotely close to passing. He had caught pneumonia while in Houston and died from that.